Hi, my name is Nellie. I am 35 years old, and I have had obsessive-compulsive disorder for 31 years. I wanted to talk a little bit about being what we call a PureO. And a PureO is not a term that is accepted by the psychiatric community, but it is a term that a lot of us people that suffer from OCD use to label ourselves. And mostly that's because although we have OCD, we do not do the symptoms that people are most associated when they think of obsessive-compulsive disorder. So in my case, I have been compulsive before, but I have also been what I would call a PureO, which stands for purely obsessional. And the difference between a compulsive person who may touch things, count things, feel like things need to be even or right, is that a PureO person doesn't do that. But we still have the obsessions and the intrusive thoughts and the guilt and the shame that those things bring. But instead of physically doing the compulsions that you see like on television or you would read about in books, what we do is usually some kind of mental mantra, like we'll say something to ourselves in our head, or we will do some kind of a thought process that banishes the anxiety that comes from those thoughts. OCD, although there are times when you're full of anxiety, the reason we compulse, whether it be mentally or physically, is to get rid of the anxiety. And how that works is like, let's say you're going to go open the door and you go to reach for the doorknob and something in your head says, if you don't touch the doorknob a certain way or a certain number of times, your family's going to die in a fiery car accident. You may hear that voice say that. You may just have the thought, or you might actually even have like a mental image, like a video playing in your head of that happening. And so that, of course, creates a huge amount of anxiety because you love your family. And then you feel guilty because you think, my God, why would I think something like that? And then to get rid of that anxiety, you would end up touching the doorknob until it felt right, or however many times it took till it felt right. And then that's how and why people physically compulse. It's not an enjoyable thing. It's not something that we do that makes us feel good. In fact, doing it makes us feel worse because it takes forever and it's humiliating. But on top of it, that's the one thing that eases the anxiety of your intrusive thoughts. I liken it to being like drugs, because the first time you do it, it works, and then you do it again, and then you do it again, and you do it again. And each time you kind of hope that it will keep the anxiety at bay. But, I mean, it's like drugs because that never works, and you have to keep doing it because it will come back. So that is the difference between physical compulsion and what a PureO person such as myself would do in case I would have, let's say I go to touch the doorknob and I have that image in my head, and instead of touching the doorknob, I might say something in my head repetitively, or I might purposely force myself to think about something else, or do something else that's mental that you don't see that does the same kind of thing that touching the doorknob a certain number of times would do. The difference being that somebody who physically compulses, you will most likely at some point see that. A PureO, you would not. So you would look at me and not know that I have severe obsessive-compulsive disorder since I was 4. But you would look at maybe someone else And you would instantly know by the things that they were doing that clearly they were compulsing. So that's really the difference, and the only difference, between what we call purely obsessional thinking, which technically isn't purely obsessional, you're still compulsing, and the difference between what people usually think of when they think of obsessive-compulsive disorder and the things that those people do. I will say that I've had it for so long that I was a compulsor for a long period of time, and then for some reason around the age of 22 that stopped and I became a PureO, or purely obsessional. And that was really hard for me because I knew that I still had OCD, but I didn't know what was going on with it because it was totally different than how I had had it the whole time. And through some research and websites and things, I started hearing this term PureO, and it just fit me, and I knew, okay, this is what I am. I'm still OCD, but most people don't know I'm OCD just by looking at me. So that's the only difference. We're still OCD. We still have the intrusive thoughts. We still have the guilt. We just don't appear to be doing things repetitively. But that doesn't mean that we're not. It just means, you're not in our brains. So it's probably a good thing. So that's the difference between a PureO and a normal obsessive-compulsive disorder person. We are exactly the same, just our symptoms look different. So, all right, thanks.